On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks found Derrick Jones Jr. last year, and he rose up to become a really good rotation player for the Mavericks. Dyson Daniels for the Hawks this year has risen up to become an elite defender. Can the Mavs find that next elite defender? We'll talk about that and more in today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
Everyone's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
Still can't eat milk.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager, Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being an everydayer, making Locked On Mavs your first listen. Subscribe to our free Locked On Mavs newsletter. Check the link in the description or the QR code on the screen to get your newsletter sent to your inbox every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Today's episode, we'll get into Kyrie Irving could be returning today, tomorrow, wherever you listen to this, against the Denver Nuggets. He's listed as questionable. What does that mean for the Mavs? We'll also talk about a couple things that we've seen in the last 5 games for the Mavericks, what we've learned with the Mavs not playing without Luka and without Kyrie Irving. We'll get into that. But I want to start here. The Mavs have done this a couple of times now. Nico Harrison's been great in finding these guys that he just picks out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden they rise to the ranks of becoming a rotation player. I think Quentin Grimes is kind of that guy right now. He was not really playing that much for the Pistons. I think people around the league knew that he was good and that he was a good player, and he was a starter for the Knicks and all that. He was just kind of wasting away with the Pistons as he was dealing with that injury too, so that was just kind of a weird scenario. But they bring him in, and now all of a sudden he's playing the second most minutes per game of his career. And he's really stepped up, and he's been really great for the Mavericks and averaging 10 points a game and shooting the ball 40% from 3 and shooting really well. And last year, the Mavericks did the same thing with Dante Exum, who hasn't played for the Mavs yet this season, so we'll see what happens with him, where he was not even playing in the NBA. And then all of a sudden, Nico Harrison brings him back to the NBA. He plays really well. He wins literally 4 games for the Mavericks last year. I was on record several times last year to say that the Mavericks would not have won 4 games if Dante Exum was not on the team. Wild for a role player to be that specifically helpful in a bunch of games like that, which swung maybe the Mavs going to the finals or not, because if they lose those 4 games, I don't know. Derrick Jones Jr. is also an example of a player who was playing 14 minutes a game for the 40-42 Chicago Bulls. Like a key rotation player, kind of, but not really, not even a starter. He didn't start. I don't think he started any games for that team. He was just a player that was not well utilized. And then he joins the Mavericks, and all of a sudden, he's a starter on a finals team. And I think the Mavs need to find some lightning in a bottle with an elite defender like that. And I think the best example recently is Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels was playing 22 minutes a game for the Pelicans. Their Pelicans were 49-33 last year, so they were pretty good. And then now Dyson Daniels went to the Hawks, got a bigger opportunity, and all of a sudden, he's this elite defender, going to definitely be first team all defense this year, maybe in the running for defensive player of the year, because he's insane. He went from 6 points a game to 13 points a game. He went from 2.5 assists to 3.5 assists. He went from 1.5 steals to 3.1 steals a game and only went up 11 minutes. And his defensive metrics, a defensive stat from Basketball Index called Defensive LeBron, D-LeBron, which is their catch-all kind of stat I'm going to talk about a lot today. It basically stayed the same. His defensive efficiency was basically the same from a smaller role to a bigger role, which is very hard to do. That he was just as impactful in the amount of minutes. It's easier to be impactful in a small amount of minutes. It's harder in a bigger amount of minutes. And so the Mavericks, I think, one of the big questions we've been asking is, can they find an elite wing defender? Or do they need to? I mean, with the team that they have right now, I think they're capable of a lot of things. I think they can beat pretty much anybody if Luka and Kyrie are... I think they can beat anybody if Luka and Kyrie are healthy. I'll say that. If they're both healthy, 100% going into a series, I think they can beat anybody. Cleveland, Boston, OKC, doesn't matter to me. Last year, they had some issues. This team now is a better team on paper and definitely a better team on the court than the team last year, just the way they're constructed. Nico Harrison brought in Klay Thompson, Dinwiddie, Naji Marshall, Quentin Grimes. It adds a lot. You get another year of Dereck Lively being better. You get another year of PJ Washington being incredible in his role. And hopefully Kyrie Irving will be better than he was against the Celtics last year. But The elite wing defenders in the NBA, there's just not that many of them. It's OG Anunoby, Dyson Daniels, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jalen Suggs for the Magic, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort for the Thunder, Drew Holiday, Derek White for the Celtics, Giannis I would still probably put in there. And you have the ones that are kind of available. We've talked about Herb Jones a lot on this show, so we won't bring him up that much. Jaden McDaniels of the Timberwolves. Timberwolves are now a couple games over 500. They've kind of righted the ship a little, and so they're not that desperate anymore. Maybe there's some money things for them. Jonathan Isaac is kind of one where you're like, all right, can the Mavs find one? He's already elite defender, so I'm not going to talk about him too much today because we're looking for somebody that has not shown to be an elite defender that could become one. Jonathan Isaac already is. His D. LeBron stat is insane. Like that metric really values him. He's like the best in the NBA as a defender. He's making $25 million this year, and then he'll make $15 million and descending each of the next 4 years after that. The injury issues have always been a big problem for me, and I don't know if I can get around to bringing in Jonathan Isaac, so I'm not sure if he's 100% a target, but if the Mavs are looking to, we have to 100% get a elite defensive guy, then Jonathan Isaac could be one. All right, let's get into it. So the D. LeBron stat I'm going to talk about is, this is how they define it. LeBron is an acronym. It's not like about LeBron. It's an acronym. Luck-adjusted player, L. E estimated using a box prior regularize on-off. So they like take the on-off numbers, they take the box plus minus, they take the luck-adjusted stat that they do. So there's not just luck that a player is playing with great players on the floor with them and all that. And then they regularize it across the board. And so it's just basically a way to see how effective certain players are defensively when they're on the court. And I think for the most part, it does a good job. Do the Mavericks have candidates on their roster right now that could be this next guy? That could be the next Derrick Jones Jr., could be the next Dyson Daniels type guy. The two names that came to mind are Naji Marshall and Quentin Grimes. Now, Naji Marshall this year, I don't think has been as good defensively as I hoped he was. Last year for the Pelicans, he had a positive 0.14 D LeBron stat that we just talked about, which is, it's good to have a positive one, but it's not good to have one that's under 5, 0.5 or something like that. And I mentioned that Jonathan Isaacs was 2.93, just an insane number. For reference, PJ Washington's is 0.84. That's really, really good for a wing. That's almost elite for a wing. Centers are valued a little different. Dereck Lively's is 1.64. Really values centers, like Dwight Powell's is really good. Daniel Gafford's is really good for an NBA player, but not for a center. So you're looking at these stats and say, all right, well, Naji Marshall doesn't necessarily he hasn't really stepped up defensively as much as we thought. Maybe he could, and maybe he's still trying to figure out the defense, and once he does, he'll really lock in, and he had that weird illness stuff, and maybe he comes back, so maybe he could be the candidate for that. The other one is Quentin Grimes, who had a plus 0.3 D LeBron stat with the Knicks in 2023 when he was a starter. And so maybe he just needs more time. Currently, he's got a negative 0.3 for the Mavericks, and so does Naji Marshall. That bench unit has not necessarily been as good defensively as we had hoped. And so to see those two guys not really be as elite defensively as maybe we hoped is why the Mavs still have this role to kind of fill. Klay Thompson being that guy, Luka and Kyrie not being the best defensively because they need to focus on offense, which is completely understandable. They need that like elite linchpin guy, and just nobody on the roster is that so far. And so far, Naji Marshall and Quentin Grimes haven't stepped up into that role. You could ask, what about Dante Exum? His D LeBron stat last year was negative 0.4 on the Mavericks. So it's something about playing on that team. But for most of his career, it's been a negative actually. So he doesn't show to me as somebody that could be, all right, he's just an elite defender in waiting. He's just sitting there. He's really efficient and really good at what he does defensively, but he just needs a bigger opportunity. These other guys, you look at the ones before, Dyson Daniels had a really good D LeBron number, and then he goes to another team and he becomes even better defensively. Derrick Jones Jr., kind of the same thing. And so we're looking for some of these guys that are, all right, they're in waiting, and all of a sudden we're going to take a big leap forward because the Mavs could use a guy like that. Coming up, I'm going to name names. We're going to go through a bunch of different players, talk about if they could be targets for the Mavericks, if they could be available, because I think they could help the Mavericks defensively. So we'll get into that and more coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Wayfair. I want to sing the song, but I'm not going to, Wayfair. I'm just not going to. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. Ooh, I need to do that for mine too. I always find decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Very, very true. So true about that. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give space to a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need. Wayfair, you got just what I need. Okay, I did it. All within your budget. I'm looking for a bunch of different things for my house right now, and my favorite part about Wayfair is that it's free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. I actually have gotten some stuff from Wayfair recently. I got a bar cabinet where I can put stuff in. I can put drinks on it. I have a bunch of different glasses in it and stuff like that. And it was great. It got delivered straight to me and it was awesome. It was easy to put together and all that. There's something for every style in every home. I got it. It was just the right color that I needed, which is awesome. You know, when you're like, oh, that piece of furniture would be great. I don't want to paint it. I just want the color. Like, just give me the color that I want. They have it. Give your home a refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad. That's what we call our listeners, listening every day. We appreciate you for checking out the show. We're a daily show that covers the Dallas Mavericks every day. We've got a bunch of different ways to follow the show. Check the QR code, the link's in the description to do that. All right. Players that could be a Derrick Jones Jr. or a Dyson Daniels that the Mavs could target in a trade. First one I'll go to is a tried and true Matisse Thybulle. He's been injured a lot for the Portland Trailblazers. He has not played this year yet, but the Mavericks have already signed him. This is already somebody that the Mavericks have kind of tried to pencil in as this guy. I think he could be. He's already made an all-defensive team. He's like the perfect candidate of somebody that is a really good defender on a bad team, sitting there trying to figure out, all right, what could he be? His D-LeBron stat in 2023 with Philly and the Blazers was 1.56 positive, which is amazing. That's like what Dyson Daniels was. It shows that he could be that elite defender. His salary also matches up with Maxi's, which is something we've talked about. I don't know that you could do that, but if you really thought, all right, we just need that elite wing linchpin defender and that'll take us to another level, you don't have to worry as much about backup four at that point because then you just play a bunch of wings and your defense is already better anyway. His D LeBron with the Blazers last year was positive 0.89, which is very hard on a team like the Blazers, which I just think that it shows again how effective he could be defensively as a wing, long wingspan, has already made an all defensive team in his career. Health has been a really, really big thing for him. And yeah, I'm not sure about what I'm not sure exactly when he's going to be coming back. Yesterday they said at least 2 more weeks. And so I don't know if that fits the timeline, but maybe you bring him in at the trade deadline, and all of a sudden you're like, all right, this is the last piece we need. All of a sudden the roster is set. We've got this elite defense that we can rely on with, PJ and Matisse Thybulle and with Lively. Oh my gosh, that'd be an incredible defense. And then Luka and Kyrie just get you enough points and buckets to make it work. That's the first one. Honestly, that's the one that stands out. It's cheating because he's already made an all-defensive team, but it feels like he's just kind of out there hiding. And I know some Mavs fans will roll their eyes about it every time you bring him up, but the Mavs have already tried to sign him and tried to bring him in and tried to sign him to this contract that he's on right now because they valued him that much. And so he's the first one. Another one is Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann of the Clippers stands out to me because I think he's a really, really good defender. His D LeBron stat matches that as well. And he's started 11 out of 26 games for the Clippers. He's playing about 20 minutes. He's kind of like not used that much. He was out with an injury for a little while, and now he's just coming back for the last 3 games. But Terrence Mann is somebody that I'd look at for the Clippers because the Clippers have a couple of guys like this. Kawhi's now coming back. It would take a lot to get Terrence Mann, I think. I think they really value him. They've always kind of held him as like, all right, if we ever go for another star, this is a guy we're going to use as to build a package around. So he's probably less available than some of these other guys I'm going to mention. But that's one I wanted to mention because soon as one of these guys jumps out and is really great defensively for another team like Dyson Daniels, I'm going to come back to this episode and I'll be like, hey, see, I brought this guy up. The other one for the Clippers is Kris Dunn. Luka's favorite, but not really. Kris Dunn is this guy too. His D LeBron this year is positive 1.5, which is great. Like an amazing stat right there. Last year for Utah, it was positive 0.76. Kind of the same for Matisse Thybulle. To have a really positive D LeBron defensive stat for a bad team is really, really good. He's a good defender. We've seen it. We see how he gets into it with Luka, and we see how they go back and forth in games. But Kris Dunn could be a guy that the Mavs, let's say, now Kawhi's back and maybe Kris Dunn isn't getting as many minutes and maybe he's going to become available for him. And that's something that I would definitely look at if I'm the Mavericks because he is somebody that could come in and become an elite player like that. He's only making $5 million too. It's probably pretty gettable if you wanted to throw some contracts together and make it work. A couple of seconds, and maybe that's your missing piece. I know one that a lot of people have brought up to me is Denny Avdia of the Blazers. I don't see the defense as much as people think. For the Wizards in 2023, he had a +1 D LeBron stat, which matches kind of the eye test of what some people had seen. Oh, this guy he's a really good defender, but if his offense and his shot could come around, then all of a sudden he could be a really good player out there. And then he goes to Portland, and now his D LeBron is a -0.6. So he goes from a bad team to another bad team. It gets worse. I don't know. Maybe it's the Portland curse. We already talked about that with Thybulle, but I don't know. I just haven't really seen it. He's playing 28 minutes a game for the Blazers too. And I don't know. This is a hard one that I can't get my head around. He would be a bigger wing. He would come in and you could do some things for you. I just don't know if he's that elite defender like in waiting, right? Like, and that's what we're looking for here. We've talked about a couple already. Aaron Nesmith of the Pacers is another one for me. He's been out for 2 months with an ankle injury. He's going to be coming back soon. He's also started 113 out of 151 games for the Pacers the last couple of years. So it's not like he's been out there hiding. He's playing for the Pacers right now, but it could be a Dyson Daniels where he's kind of getting used. He's playing 22 minutes for the Pacers. He's kind of getting used. Then all of a sudden he gets to the Mavericks or gets somewhere else and has a bigger role somewhere. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see it now. Then this guy already steps up. He's had a positive D LeBron stat for the last 3 years. Here's the one that I think is the biggest example of this, but he's already kind of doing this on his own team, is Keon Ellis for the Kings. I don't see any world where the Kings give up Keon Ellis, but he's one where I'm looking at, all right, if you can get your hands on a guy like this is somebody that you really want on your team because he competes. He has these crazy games sometimes where he hits a bunch of threes. He's got a positive 1.64 D LeBron stat, which is crazy on a team like the Kings. And so I'm looking at Keon Ellis. He's playing 21 minutes. All the Kings fans have been just clamoring for him to play more, and he's been playing more under Doug Christie than he has under Mike Brown. And so that's something that you're looking at going, all right, Keon Ellis is a guy you would absolutely love to get. And this is what I'm mentioning just to throw it out there because I know that it's like someday it's going to pop up where it's like, oh, Keon Ellis, where has he been hiding this whole time? And it's been on this Kings team, and the Kings have been a lot better recently. They actually have the 12th ranked defense, which is a little surprising for that team. Here's one that I think is gettable, is good, and is also in waiting. Maybe my best example of this besides Matisse Thybulle. Haywood Highsmith of the Miami Heat. He's playing 25 minutes a game so far for the Heat. The Heat are in shambles right now with the Jimmy Butler stuff. I don't know what direction they're going to take. They may just try to retool around Bam, but Bam has not really had a good year either. So what are you really going to do? He's had a positive D LeBron in 2025, +1, and +1.5 in 2024 as well. And it's not like Miami has been this incredible defense. They're top 10 this year. But I think he's somebody that has just kind of been in waiting, that if given an opportunity somewhere else, he could maybe step up. That positive +1 in that stat is really, really big. And so I'm looking at that as somebody where, all right, could he step up? The problem for the Mavericks is how do you really stand out and how do you really get a bigger opportunity? And that's the issue that I have with some of these next guys I'm going to talk about. Can you show up and be traded mid-season, or even maybe we're talking about next season, but can they show up mid-season and go, all right, I deserve more minutes over Naji Marshall, Klay Thompson, Quentin Grimes, guys that have already grabbed all these spots and have already grabbed all these minutes and have already been playing really well for the Mavericks and winning games without Luka and Kyrie even. The guys that I just mentioned, they could probably do that. And maybe they leap forward and all of a sudden they are way better than they were before. These next guys are more Derrick Jones Jrs. They're underused, but they could be useful for a team. I don't know that that's the Dallas Mavericks. Gary Payton II, greatest example of it. He's playing just 13 minutes on the Warriors because his offense is really bad. Basketball Index has different like categories for what players are. And Gary Payton is a point of attack defender and a mobile big. He's a mobile big on offense because that's what he does, which is like he's a mobile big at 6 foot, at like what? He's 6'3" or something like that. 6'2". It's not what you want as like your archetype on offense. So that's why that's why he hasn't really played, but he's been really useful in their title run a couple years ago. He's an elite defender in waiting. It's just finding the team that can use him the right way. I don't know that the Mavs are that team. It would be great for him to be on a team. Like, I hate that this is always the example, but if he was on the Nuggets, he could be kind of what Westbrook is right now, but a way better defensive version of it. And then you got Jokic to space the floor, and you just have Gary Payton cutting and doing that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden it works. Peyton Watson for the Nuggets is this guy right now. He's actually playing 25 minutes a game. I was surprised, but I think he's a good defender, maybe in a different environment, different opportunity, different defense. Maybe he steps up as a much better defender, but that's one that I've been looking at. Max Christie for the Lakers, another one, just like Keon Ellis, where the Lakers fans were just clamoring for Max Christie to play more minutes. Now JJ Redick started playing him more, kind of underused, actually, but a little not. Nickeil Alexander-Walker for the Timberwolves, the guy that we've talked about a ton for the Mavs. He's playing 23 minutes a game for the Timberwolves right now, but he's a bench player that has done some good stuff, but maybe in a different opportunity, steps up in a big way. And then maybe like the classic example of this guy, the Lakers fans have just been waiting for forever, is Jared Vanderbilt. He's always hurt, but he hit a +1 D LeBron in last year, and he just is a really, really good defender, and he could really be an elite defender, but he just can never stay healthy. And it's been a running joke of Lakers fans. You can't evaluate this team until you see Jared Vanderbilt, and that's because he's a really good defender. So going through this, my conclusion is there's really not a ton of good options. Haywood Highsmith is definitely one. Matisse Thybulle is one. Kris Dunn is one. I mean, obviously Keon Ellis, but I don't think he'd be traded. And so I don't know that there's a player out there for the Mavericks to trade for that all of a sudden is going to step into this role. It may take an offseason for this to happen. And so maybe the Mavs have to wait for this kind of a trade in the offseason, but that's where they are right now. And so those are some of the players that I'm interested in for the Mavs as trades, and we'll see if they end up doing anything. If they don't, I think I'm okay with that too. Coming up, let's talk about Kyrie Irving returning. Let's talk about some thoughts from the last 5 games and what we've seen from this team without Luka and Kyrie. What have they shown us? What can they do next? We'll talk about that and more coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off your first purchase. Sports, music, theater, comedy. I'm going to the Stars game on Thursday. I'm excited to see some hockey. I'm going to be watching hockey. It's going to be cold in there. I'm excited to see what they do. I think they play the Canadiens. I don't know zero players. I know 0 players on the Canadiens, but it's fun to be able to look on Game Time and see the view from your seat, see exactly what you're going to see. I knew exactly what I was going to pay at checkout because I turned on the all-in pricing. I loved it. I use Game Time all the time. I use it for Wings games in the summer. I use it for theater. I've used it for concerts before. All that kind of stuff. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We're also brought to you by Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've had this ongoing problem, and I'm sure you have too, that I just don't have time. I end up just making the same meals over and over again and just going to the grocery store and getting it. And so I've used Hungry Root. I've used other services like this before, and I love it because it helps me to keep eating healthy. It gets variety in my diet as well because I know a lot of us just get sick and tired of all the same things. It's a struggle. Everything changed when people have discovered Hungry Root. It's been a game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. Man, you can pay both those people, or you can just do Hungry Root. They take care of the grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on my taste and healthy goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free. And the best part, every meal is ready in, get ready for this one, 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to my door. It's a huge time saver that has made healthy eating so much simpler. Check out Hungry Root for a limited time, 40% off your first box and a free item for every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box. Free item of choice. Free item of your choice for life. I didn't know you get to choose it. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is, huh? Anybody?
It's game day, Dirk. All right, let's get into Kyrie Irving. Officially listed as questionable for the Dallas Mavericks. By the time you're listening to this, he may be available to play or he may not. Either way, great for the Dallas Mavericks for a couple of reasons. One of them, that his injury was not worse. The bulging disc that ESPN reported on was reported on January 6th. And the fact that he is already questionable, meaning that he could come back, and that is a great sign in an injury report. If you get upgraded from out or doubtful to questionable, that means there's a chance. So you're saying there's a chance. Yes, I am. To have Kyrie Irving back, the Mavs win that game against the Nuggets the other day. If they just have him, even just for the last 5 minutes, even if they used him like Mariano Rivera, like a closer in baseball, where they just waited and they're like, all right, last 6 minutes of the game, we're up 96-94 or whatever it was. Kyrie, we're bringing you. He's coming in cold off the bench. He had not played all game. We're just bringing him in for the last 5 minutes. The Mavs win that game. They just have one more guy. And obviously, Kyrie is a great one to have. It's obvious to say that it's amazing to have him back. But let's look at some of the things we've learned about this team. Let's say Kyrie does come back. Then it may be the end of this run of the Mavs without Luka and Kyrie. So here's some things that we've learned. Without Luka, Kyrie, and even Dante Exum, I'll throw in, the Mavs ran 9 deep. The Mavs ran 9 deep while these guys were gone. It was awesome to see how deep this Mavericks roster is and to see other people, to see even Mavs haters like Matt Moore, HP Basketball, shout out to my guy, to say, man, this Mavericks team is 9 deep. They had 9 players, I think, average 12 minutes or more a game throughout this stretch. PJ Washington, Spencer Dinwiddie, Naji Marshall, Dereck Lively, Klay Thompson, Quentin Grimes, Jaden Hardy, Maxi Kleber, Daniel Gafford. Playing 12 minutes a game through this stretch of 5 games. And those are all NBA players that have all done really good things. Maxi's had a couple of good games here. Jaden Hardy had a really good stretch. Quentin Grimes has played really well. Klay Thompson had a great game the other night against the Nuggets. I mean, they've all done good things in this stretch, are all NBA players, and they're all not including Luka, Kyrie, and even Dante Exum in the rotation. So if they all come back, the Mavs have like a 12-player deep roster. Like the whole team, the whole 12-man rotation, the whole 12-man roster are all NBA players, which is amazing to have. PJ Washington was kind of tasked with running the offense or being the go-to guy. A lot of times he averaged the most shot attempts. He averaged 15.2 shot attempts per game in this stretch. Klay averaged 12.8. So PJ, the number one guy as far as the most shots taken in those last 5 games. And PJ averaged 17 points on 15 shots. That's very inefficient. As if you're looking at him and you're thinking, all right, that's our number one guy or even your number 2 guy or something, that's not gonna cut it. But I think what we learned about PJ is he's got other ways that he can score in his bag. And this is something I really wanted them, ever since the Mavs traded for him, I wanted them to look at how can PJ do other things in this offense? How can he show his ball handling? How can he show his ability in the pick and roll? Because he was one of the few players in the NBA a couple years ago to run like 100 possessions as a pick and roll ball handler and as a screener and roller at the same time. It was like him, Giannis, Anthony Davis. Like there's just not many players that do that. Probably Jokic now. There's just not many players that run a pick and roll and also set screens at the same time. That much. And so PJ being that unique player like that, it was cool to see him get to do that. Now, it wasn't very efficient. He shot 39% from the field, shot 32% from 3. That's gone down and back down to earth a little bit here. But he had some good games in there. He scored 17 points a game, and the Mavs needed all of them. And they went 2-3 in this stretch, and they don't go 2-3 without him. The other thing about the offense, and this is the thing that I think was maybe the most important that we learned. The Mavs have a bunch of other offensive options without Luka and Kyrie. You have everything Luka and Kyrie do up top, as far as going through all the offensive options the Mavs have. Everything Luka and Kyrie do, which is like a million things. Like so many things. Then, Lively as the passing hub has been really good these last couple of games. Have him at the free throw line or the top of the key and just have guys run around, dribble handoffs, and just handoffs. Klay Thompson running around, Jaden Hardy running around, Quentin Grimes running around, even PJ running around. Naji trying to run through guys. Having Lively as that hub, Lively averaged 3.2 assists per game in the last 5. That's great. Like you'll take that for a big man that can do that and can give you a little extra. If it's not just Luka and Kyrie pounding the rock and ISOing and then trying to create out of that. Klay and Lively, the 2-man game worked really well. Not just Lively standing still and being that hub like that, but Lively setting screens and rolling and popping out and having Klay Thompson run around those screens and having the handoffs where Lively comes and hands the ball off to Klay, sets a screen for his man right away, like for Klay's man right away, and then Klay can get a shot off because his release is so quick, was great. That was one of the ways he got so many points in these last couple of games here. That's been awesome to have that. And that had nothing to do with Luka or Kyrie because they were running that without them. You also have these post-ups. PJ has been posting up all year. We've talked about it a lot. It's one of the first things the Mavs do every game is they try to get them, when Luka and Kyrie play, they try to get this mismatch, and PJ goes up and he gets a mismatch against one of the worst offensive or defensive players in the other team and then posts up and scores on them. But his post-ups have been not so great in this stretch because he's not getting the same kind of mismatches, but they have that to go to. Lively has also shown that he can get some stuff done in a post-up. The other night, he had some great stuff. He's averaging 12 points a game in this stretch, and that's up from his regular season. I think he was at like 8 or 9 or something like that. And so he's getting some more opportunity just to get some hook shots, and he's getting a lot of mismatches underneath. He got this a lot in the Nuggets game, where if you set a screen and they double the ball handler, which is going to happen with Luka and Kyrie. It happened with Dinwiddie the other night. It happened with Klay when he started getting hot. The Nuggets would double the ball handler. Lively is wide open in the middle of the lane. You give it to him. His man is not with him. And then you have somebody else come over and try to defend. It was Michael Porter Jr. a lot, or Aaron Gordon, or somebody else. They become the low man, which is the man like under the rim as the defender. And Lively can just stop and take a second and then kind of get set and then take a hook shot over him, and he made a bunch of them. And that's something the Mavs can go to. It's a very important play I think the Mavs can use a lot. I think the Mavs also kind of realize that they have a bunch of guys that can drive and kick. Remember the days of 2022 was just Luka, or 2021 even, go back to, it was just Luka. Before Brunson really took off, it was kind of just Luka, the only guy that could dribble and like drive and kick. Or it was just Luka and JJ Barea, Devin Harris. You know, like, remember those days? Like, you just had not a lot of options of guys that can dribble, penetrate the defense, and can kick out to shooters and pass to those open shooters. But in this stretch, Quentin Grimes averaged 4.4 assists. Spencer Dinwiddie averaged 6.2 assists. Naji Marshall, 2.8 assists. Hardy even, 1.8 assists. All guys that can drive and kick, that can handle the ball, that can navigate in traffic, some better than others, but can navigate some traffic and can throw out to these other shooters. And that didn't include Luka or Kyrie at all. And Luka and Kyrie could be those shooters sometimes. Sometimes you work so hard to get a better matchup for Luka or Kyrie to dribble, a guy to dribble against. You're trying to find that matchup. Maybe that matchup is with Grimes already, and you just give the ball to Grimes and say, all right, you drive and kick, and then we'll get the open shot and get a better shot. Taking advantage of a bad defender, than an Austin Reeves or somebody like that again with the Lakers. They tried that over and over again. And we also have a bunch of guys in the same kind of vein that can push in transition. You get a rebound, you grab the ball, and you just run out in transition and you try to make things happen. Naji Marshall's been excellent at that this year. PJ Washington has started to do that more this year. Quentin Grimes has been doing it. Klay can do that as both the guy that streaks out as a transition three-point shooter and also can grab the ball and just dribble and can take the ball to the floor. Hardy, same thing. So the Mavs have all these different options on offense now. And I think that they're going to put them all together and use them when Luka and Kyrie come back. And with Kyrie, it could be sooner than later. And I'm excited to see when that happens. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. Check out the links in the description or the QR code to find ways to follow the show. We have all kinds of great stuff all the time. Thanks for hanging out with us. We have a daily show that covers the Mavericks every day, as well as post games. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out.